On April 24th, Samurai wallet operators were arrested by the DOJ, their web servers and domain were seized. 2 days later, France-based Phoenix Wallet announced it would remove itself from the US app stores and told US users to empty their personal wallets. On April 27th, ZK Snacks started blocking US residents from visiting its website using Wasabi Wallet and any related products and services, including the APIs. It sounds like Bitcoin is taking an L, but I don't believe this is the case. You've heard this before. The fundamentals have not changed. But what has grown more obvious is the government's panicked actions to survive another year, another month, another day. And to do that, they must make a desperate and ultimately failing attempt to tax and surveil everything.
And my last point to you, you do not sell your Bitcoin.
It's Sir Ulric and my signal meter is red. There's a heavy cloud of coercion over the network that provides liberty to its participants. Services that have operated in the US for years are taking their talents elsewhere or closing up shop for good. And our favorite three-letter organization, the IRS, is on the move, making an example of one, and the two others aren't waiting around to be next. For what reason? We can either take what they report for face value or use rationalism to come up with a more likely answer. In the DOJ press release for this arrest, the phrase 2 billion was used 8 times and 100 million was used 6. Normally when things are repeated like this, the source wants to drill an idea into your psyche so it blends with reality. In this instance, it is $2 billion in unlawful transactions and 100 million in criminal proceeds. Isn't that weird? You would think those phrases are virtually interchangeable in normal language. This is IRS Special Agent in Charge Thomas Fataruso, who loves being in the spotlight with as many pictures as he has of himself online. He gave the key factors and their rationale for actions against the defendants. He said, quote, 2 billion in transactions with an unlicensed money transmitter means 2 billion flowed without any oversight from whomever to wherever. Because of the company's disregard for regulation, it is alleged that Samurai Wallet laundered more than 100 million in criminal proceeds. Spoken as plain as day is the overt and conscious violation of first principle property rights. I don't mean that people have the innate right to privacy. Privacy is rather a derivative of property rights to one's own information. What I mean is you own the information in your head, your decisions, your thoughts, your values. And if you determine to deliver that value to someone else, you choose to divulge it to them and whomever else you choose to be made aware. How that person acquired it is frankly no one's business, not even the government's. The government's job was to protect its citizens from those who would what? Encroach on their property, foreign or domestic. Is there a robber? Call the police. A fire? Firemen will come soon. Foreign invaders? The army you would think might be there to protect. But who is to protect the people from the people who are supposed to protect us? Again, notice the report made a clear distinction between the $2 billion and $100 million. They seemingly have enough evidence to pursue the criminal activity under the subset of 100 million. However, the goal is to have ownership over the 2 billion that was deemed unlawful, and the law is being used to assault citizens rather than protect them. These governments love using the combination of vague language, uneducated population, and unwarranted fear-mongering to tax and steal from the value creators in society, aka you. There is nothing unlawful or intrinsically bad about a transaction. Your government, unaware of them, has not resulted in any identifiable risk to your daily life. Harken back to 20, 50, or 200 years ago, and transactions were even more private and untracked by governments. Most people would say times were better back in the day considering cost of living and the government's limited reach. The growth of the surveillance state is not improving the livelihood of anyone with the exception of those who own and operate government institutions. As technology progresses, the people who thrive off of government expansion use it to more easily take what was never theirs to begin with. I'm sure many of us, depending on profession, could call out a number of egregious wastes within government operations. But nothing is more wasteful than to sit back and watch money change owners unless there is a plan to tax every exchange. Just like there's no point for the government to use Visa or Google to track carbon footprint unless there's a plan to tax the energy you use. Just like there's no point in building 15-minute cities unless there's a plan to tax human movement. Are you catching on to the trend? Your governments are looking for new creative ways to take your earnings, and often with the help of a new generation of public policy experts. This path is due to ignoring the consequences of big government, soft money, and the rumblings of a debt spiral. Culture Corner has us going 32 years back to a quote from Hal Finney. The computer can be used as a tool to liberate and protect people rather than to control them. We are fortunate to have Bitcoin. It is the technological antithesis to the parasite class of people who exist purely to steal from you. Are we bound by a state-owned society? Yes, so we're going to pay taxes. But is it realistic to pay a tax for something that the government does not own or control? Property taxes? Okay, it's the government's land and you can't own what you can't defend. Income tax? Maybe because the government keeps the peace allegedly by protecting the borders. I mean, I can't even say that with a straight face. But the audacity for any government to claim surveillance or taxation rights on a global decentralized information network, they have essentially lost their minds. Maybe they can pull the CIA Satoshi out of the shadows and rewrite every past Bitcoin block with a US flag ordinal inscription. But honestly, the idea to tax something that does not belong to you is not communist nor statist. It's desperately delusional. Why should a fool have money in his hand to buy wisdom when he has no sense? Regardless of who's running the US executive branch, it's important to consider this one line in the report. Samurai operates a centralized server that, among other things, supervises and facilitates transactions between Samurai users and creates new BTC addresses used during the transactions. Samurai, love it or hate it, was a centralized server, therefore a single point of failure. Any centralized server operates at the whim of the local government. Does that mean that there's a possibility for a decentralized coin join mixing system in the future? Where there's an incentive, there's a possibility. After all, we have bank bailouts and crony capitalism to thank for Bitcoin in the first place. As building on top of Bitcoin matures, so will tools for protecting your wealth. The governments have made it clear they're willing to tax you on anything and everything, regardless of how crazy it sounds. And they will rely on time past for you to forget how outraged you felt when it first happened. Bitcoin is a fortress of protection for your value in multiple ways. The inflation tax is one. As governments print to pay their bills or default on them, the free market will determine the literal value of money. Bitcoin wins that one every time. But no one can take your Bitcoin from you. This is the chief reason why self-custody is such a threat to their entire scheme. This is the reason they don't really care about centralized crypto operations either. It's why they loved FTX and SBF so much, one of the greatest donors to the government machine ever to be unveiled. And they would have gotten away with all of it too, if it wasn't for that meddling Bitcoin and cold storage. Yet still, as governments figure out new ways to siphon value from individuals, Bitcoin's evolution will branch to counter those actions. As decentralized programmable money, no insolvent state will ever be able to turn the lights off on Bitcoin or its support services in the future. I am Sir Ulric, like my father before me. Bitcoin is the Black Knight in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. 'Tis but a scratch.